Today we talked about handling files and folders in VBA and VB.NET. The first thing we talked about is dialogs. In order to open the OpenFileDialog and the SaveAsFileDialog in VBA, there are two ways in general. You can either use the FileDialog property of the Excel application object, and there are four types of the dialogs, or you can use the methods of the Excel application object, which are GetOpenFileName and GetSaveAsFileName. This is how you use FileDialog property in VBA. You set an object variable fd to the FileDialog property of the application object and give it a constant. Depending on which kind of dialogs you want to open, you give it a different constant. Then you show the dialog by calling your show method and open or save as a file by calling the execute method. This is an OpenFile example, a simple example. Here you set a variable fd to the FileDialog property of the application object and give it the constant MSO FileDialog open, meaning that you want to open the OpenFileDialog. And then with that object you show the dialog, and if the user does not press the cancel button, you loop for each file in .selected items. So selected items property give you a collection of selected files. So look for each file in this collection and you call the execute method, meaning you open each file. This is another example using the SaveAsFileDialog. The code is very much similar, except that you give the FileDialog property another constant, MSO FileDialog save as, meaning that you want to open the save as dialog. And if the user do not press the cancel button, you call the execute method to save the file. If you don't want to open or save as files, but just simply get the file names from the dialog, then you use the constant MSO FileDialog file picker. Then it shows the dialog. If the user do not click the cancel button, you loop through the selected items collection and get the file name. In this example, you just concatenate the file names together into a message and display the message using the message box function. The folder picker example is similar as the file picker example, except that now you select folders instead. If you don't want to use the FileDialog property, another way is to use the GetOpenFileName and GetSaveAsFileName methods of the application object. And once you have the file name, you can do anything with that. For example, open the file name, and the files have to be Excel files. in order to open by calling the method open of the workbooks collection. This is an example. You call the GetOpenFileName of the application object. The first argument is the filter. In the filter, you specify two file types that you want to display. Each type comes as a pair of the type, the description of the type, as well as the type itself. So the first file type in the filter is Excel 97 workbooks, and the second type is Excel 2000 workbooks. The second type is selected by default, and the title of the dialog is Select a File. If the user really selects a file, then the file name is returned into str Excel file. You then can open the file using the open method of the workbooks collection. To open the GetSaveAsFileName dialog, you call the GetSaveAsFileName method of the application object, and once you have the file name, you can save as the file name. The code is very much similar. Now let's talk about dialogs in VB.NET. In VB.NET, you cannot declare objects of the FileDialog class because this class is an abstract class. Instead, you use the controls. There are two controls, OpenFileDialog and SaveFileDialog. Or you can use the two corresponding classes, OpenFileDialog and SaveFileDialog. Those classes inherit from FileDialog class. And also similarly, you can use the methods of the Excel application object just like what you did in VBA by calling the methods GetOpenFileName and GetSaveAsFileName of the Excel application object. Now let's see how you can modify the bond calculator application. Previously, you have to fix the file names in the code for the open and the save buttons. Now you want to display the dialog, the open file dialog when you click the open button, and the save as file dialog when you click the save button. In Visual Studio.NET, go to the toolbox and look for SaveFileDialog Control. Grab it and pull it onto the form. You won't see it on the form, but you see it down here instead. So you have the files, the save file dialog, and it is automatically named SaveFileDialog1. And do the same thing, look for OpenFileDialog Control. Grab it, pull it onto the form, and it shows down here. Then change the names of the dialogs. So you can see in the code, the name of the save dialog is DLG save. DLG stands for dialog. So the first thing is you call the show dialog method to show the dialog and let user select files. So once the user selects a file or files and click the OK button. Then you have the file name. The file name property of the dialog gives you the selected file. You store the file name in the variable str file, and later on when you want to save the file, you save to that file. So with the dialog, you have more flexibility. You can specify where to save the file as well as the file name. The code for the open button is similar, except that now you show the open file dialog instead. And once the user selects a file, you get the file name from the file name property of the dialog and store it in a variable str file. And you check if the file really exists. If it does, then you open the file using that variable. The rest of the code is the same as the previous example. When we fixed the file name, if you don't want to use the OpenFileDialog and the SaveFileDialog controls, you can create objects based on the corresponding classes. For example, you declare an object, a DLG save, and also create an object based on the SaveFileDialog class, and point that object variables to that object. If you don't want to use the controls as well as the corresponding classes, the next way is to use the Excel application object methods. The first thing you have to do is to add reference to Microsoft Excel object library, and on the top of the module you write import Microsoft.office.interop. The two methods of the Excel application object are GetOpenFileName and GetSaveAsFileName, just like in VBA. And then you need to create the application object. So you use the new keyword in front of Excel.application. So once you have the application object, the rest is just similar as VBA. For example, you type obj Excel dot, then you will see the methods GetOpenFileName and GetSaveAsFileName, and you can select one or the other depending on your purpose. Now let's talk about handling text files. In VBA, you use the open statements for handling text files. Open for input reads from files, open for output writes to the files, and open for append text to the files. In VB.NET, you use the stream reader and stream writer objects of the corresponding classes. How to read files, how to read text files. In Windows, open files are assigned a number. So first, you have to call the freeFile function to get a free number and store that number in a variable, and later on open the file with that number. For reading text files, you open the file for input. This is an example. So you can see the first thing is you call the free file function to get a free file number, and then open a file for input as that number come after the pound sign. The EOF function, EOF stands for enter file. So if you give it the file name, the file number, it returns false if you haven't reached to the end of the file. So while EOF returns false, then you loop through the file and read from the file with that file number. Read each line into a variable str line using line input statement, and then store that line into a cell in worksheet 1 of the collection of the worksheets collection. So the first line is stored in cell 1, the second line is stored in cell 2, etc., etc. And at the end, you need to close the file by using this syntax: close, and then the pound sign, and then the file number. For writing to text files, you use the open statement with 4 output. Let's look at this example. You open this file, export.txt for output, meaning to write to the file with that given file number, and then you want to write the content of sheet 1 to the file. So do while an index variable I less than the number of rows in a range starting from A1. You write to the file with that file number and using the write statement. You write the content of cell in worksheet 1. So cell 1 is written to the first line in the text file. Cell 2 is written to the second line, etc. And at the end, you need to close the file. In VB.NET, handling text files are different. For reading text files, you need to create stream reader objects, and in the constructor you give it the path, or the full name of the file, and later on you call the readLine method to read each line from the text file using the stream reader object. This is an example. At first you need to write imports system.io. So this namespace contained the stream reader and stream writer classes. In this console application, you create a stream reader for this file code.txt, and that stream reader is used to read the file content, and then you read the first line by calling the readLine method and store that into a variable, namely line, and then write the content of the variable using console.writeLine. You call it writeLine method of the console object. For writing text files, you need to create objects of the StreamWriter class. And when you want to write to the file, you call the writeLine method. So in this example, you create a StreamWriter object for the file code.txt and write 2 lines, the code of 2 stocks, Google and Yahoo, to the text file. Another way of handling text files is to use the FileSystemObject, and this is available in both VBA and VB.NET. So in order to do this, from the project menu, you select Add Reference, and then check the Microsoft Scripting Runtime in. This is example for VBA. You need to create an object, a FileSystemObject using the create object, and once you have the object, you can create text files using the create text file method, and then write to the file using the writeLine method. Notice that in VBA you use the set statement, but you don't use the set statement in VB.NET. And also in VB.NET you can also use the new keyword to create object.